Let's talk a little bit about DJT, Trump Media and Technology. Where are we? If you can see that, here we go. We're on the 3-day time frame. I did that so we can squeeze in the entire history. Even though there is not much history, looks like this goes back to like late 2021 when it started. And just full disclosure, this from a technical standpoint, I'd say this whole section right in here really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't see a lot of like patterns or consistency. However, right here is where I want to dig in. So there is definitely some goodness in this. So let me just walk you through what I am seeing. So for starters, in trading, or not trading, but technical analysis, there's patterns. And this one, this appears to me like a fairly textbook inverse head and shoulders pattern. So just think of somebody that's upside down. Here's their left shoulder. This is the head. And this is the right shoulder, which looks to be completing up the right side of the shoulder to this neckline. Out of all of the patterns, the inverse head and shoulders pattern is number one out of the hundreds of them. So I'll explain where price action is going if we can get price to get up to this neckline, and that will tell me from a confirmation standpoint that this is in fact an inverse head and shoulders pattern. So I drew this trend line and I anchored it up here at this high. And then you can see that we had a nice touch when price came up here, got rejected. So now when price, I'm going to say when it gets up here, it's going to be interesting what is going to take place. For example, once it gets here, is it going to push to the upside, or is it going to do one of these where it gets rejected and goes to the downside? So when price gets to this level, which is about, depending on when price hits it, call it $57 and change. Do me a favor, if you have questions, just circle back with me, okay? So now let me share with you what else I'm seeing. I'm going to do just a basic horizontal fib. Let me just share with you this. So I anchored the fib right there at that all-time high, which is the major high, as well as down here, which is the major swing low. There's a lot of goodness that I'm seeing. Let me swing this over. Yeah. So it's interesting how the Fibonacci sequence, how much it really comes into play into the TradFi markets as well as cryptos, even though the Fibonacci sequence has been around for centuries, time-tested, battle-tested. But here's what I like. So we've got price action, right here. It's resting on the 0.382, which is the $33 line. Now here's what happens historically on this 0.5 fib number. The way I look at this is like the midline. So if we drew, a horizontal line this way, and then obviously down here, this is literally the 50% or midline between that horizontal rectangle, if that makes sense. And the reason why I'm telling you that is because when price does get above this 0.5, it is typically an explosive move to the upside. But again, time will tell, because this is going to take a little bit. Maybe a couple weeks, couple months max. But now let's do this. Let's anchor an anchored volume or a VWAP. Yeah, this is awesome. Okay, you're going to love this. The anchored VWAPs, Brian Shannon, chartered market technician, really put these back on the map. And you can see right here, price got hung up, rejected at the VWAP. It also happened right here. We had a false breakout, got kicked back. And we had another one right here. But the reason why I say that is because once price breaks above these VWAPs, then price gets really explosive to the upside. This is when the smart money, not retail money, but this is when the smart money is waiting to pile in, and we've got this double confluence. So when price breaks out above this VWAP, goes back to this 0.5 fib, where I was telling you it gets explosive. This VWAP just validates that comment I made a few minutes ago about the explosiveness of this fib. So now let's take a look at what another volume indicator. Yeah, this is great news. This is really great news. So this is volume by price. And you can see we've got this large volume node. I call it like the wall of worry per se, but this is or a launch pad. So right now we've got price just resting on, just getting over this hurdle, this last volume node. And you can see there really is no more thick volume nodes. Here's one right there, which is around $70, but I don't think that's going to create us any headache, because Once we get to the golden zone, the 0.618, we're off to the races. And I'm going to do some price action where I think price is going to eventually end up here in a second. But yeah, I think once we get past this blue line, this anchor DWAP, that's low hurdle number 1 we've got to get over. And then low hurdle number 2 is this downward trend line. Well, once price breaks above this, and then it's exciting time. So now let me walk you through where I think price is what it's gonna look like, price action, and then I'll wrap up the video. I don't know how long it's gonna take for price to get up to, this trend line. It could make it in a myriad of ways, but since this right here, remember, we're into this, coming up on this right shoulder. It looks like we're finishing the right shoulder, and we should have a nice pop here pretty soon. But however price gets to this neckline, remember, we could either do one of these, could either do one of these, which I'm not too sure what's going to happen, but if this is a true inverse head and shoulders pattern, I give this a low probability, like 20%. Let me get those fibs back. Get rid of that. So that's the risk I'm seeing. Now, let's just assume however price gets up to this neckline, but it breaks through it, okay? I see this. Now, we've got this right here, or this wick where the price got rejected. So I could see price doing something like this. So we have a breakout. It's very common for price action to do these pullbacks or these retests. So we could have price come back down here, bounce for a pullback or a retest, and then we're off to this 786 level. And I want to talk about the 786 level for a second, but in essence, I see it something like that. And from a time perspective, that looks like to me, that's fair, right around June of 2025, which brings price to at this 786 level, call it $98. And at time of recording, price is at $36. By the way, what is that? So that is from where we are at now. Yeah. So to get to this downward trend line, that's about another 47%. So we got to get through that hurdle first. And then once it breaks out of that downward trend line, high probability we're going up to the 786, and that's about another 172%. And the reason why I'm zeroing in on the 786, this is typically a kind of strong overhead resistance. So we may get some pushback, and so have price come back down here and then resume higher to the upside. So when price gets to the $98 level, feel free to circle back and I can help answer any questions, okay? But this is what's really exciting. This is what's really exciting, is if we get lucky, and I think we will now that Trump is in office, that if we can get price to get back to the all-time high, if you can see this gray faint line, which is $171.81. But when price does break out of that, remember, TradFi and cryptos love fibs. So when price does get to this neckline, and if we're lucky and it breaks out above it, which I actually think it's going to now that Trump is in office, these 1.618 act like magnets. And that price at the 1.618 is $928, or these 1.414s, these also act as overhead. Again, circle back if I can do anything once we get, price that breaks out above this downward trend line. But we got the 1.414 at $535, and then the golden zone at $928. So this is what's really cool, is that from time of recording, if we were to measure this move again back up to the all-time high, is 370%. And then right here, we've got a move about almost 1,400%. I think that's almost a lock if we can get that price to break out above that all-time high neckline. And then I'll leave you with this. Again, high probability with the assumption price breaks out of this all-time high over here. That's almost a 2,500% move. So with all that being said, I hope that was helpful, but this thing really does look good. We got two small hurdles. We've got to get price over this anchor VWAP, and remember, when it does, it's going to be explosive. And then the second hurdle we've got right here is this downward, multi-year downward trend line. That if we get price to break through that, we're golden. Anyways, I hope that was helpful, and thanks so much.